Hello! So today we're going to be talking about a very important concept in TFT, which is called playing for placements, or basically what you're trying to do is adjust your strategy based on what other people are doing in your lobby. It's very important to always be aware of what other people in your lobby have on their boards, what resources they have, how much gold they have, how much HP they have, because that all affects exactly which comps you decide to play, how you decide to play them, when you decide to roll, when you decide to spike, and lots of other things that can greatly affect your final placement. And the idea is that you should always identify what other people's looks like their placements are going to be, as that can greatly affect how you end up in the game. Now, before we get much further, I would like to say, make sure to like and subscribe if you do like my content. If you're here returning because you've liked a couple of my videos before, or you watched a couple videos and they were helpful in any way, please make sure to like and subscribe because it does help me as a small content creator. Additionally, I have my store that's open now, shop.fenrir'sart. There is a Jinx Yukio style picture if you're into that, because it's like more TFT related, but also other anime and other memorabilia. I'm also going to be starting wood carving tomorrow on stream. I posted a stream schedule on my little community post, so I'm going to be doing wood carving tomorrow, and like final products of that are also going to get up on the website eventually. So that's just a little side project. But anyways, let's get to the importance of others in TFTs. This is a really major idea, but the basic concept is you always want to be scouting other people's boards. You want to have your head on a swivel, always estimating what their placements are going to be. And based on what you estimate, that can greatly affect how you decide to play out different comps, right? Everybody kind of knows from any website that you go to, even if you watch some of my guides, hey, this comp's strong, that comp's weak. This unit's strong, that unit's weak. We all know what the end boards look like. We all know what perfect items on perfect units look like. You're not special for that, right? Nobody, like, you know, we can all Google it. You know what I mean? A big part of TFT is being able to judge how strong you are and how that affects you relative to the other people. It doesn't matter which board is the strongest. It doesn't matter which board is the best. It matters how strong you are relative to other people. And that depends on how you hit your units and when you hit your units. The journey along the way, which is a really important concept that you have to be very firm grasp on. It also takes a lot of time. But part of this is playing for placements. Especially if you're trying to climb in TFT, playing for placements is very important. Ideally, you just go first every single game. You go there, you're the reincarnated god of TFT. You come in and you just go first, bang, 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 first. You're challenger #1 rank. That's not always the case. Based on how the game is going, you have to alter your strategy. You can't just queue into every single game saying, I'm going to go first, and if I don't go first, oh well. A lot of times while things are happening, it's very dynamic. Somebody can change their board drastically from one round to the next, right? Somebody just finds a Warwick in one round. All of a sudden, everything's all in disarray. Somebody was really weak, suddenly becomes very strong. That's part of TFT in every set. Like, this set has its things that are kind of tilting and annoying, which I'm sure some of you agree with, and it has its things that are really consistent and amazing, or things that are RNG that are very fun. No matter what, that's a core aspect of TFT. And you always have to look around at what's going on in the game and then alter your strategy based on that. So, when you're playing for first, a lot of times you're either ahead or you're the strongest in the lobby. You want to play greedy when you're playing for a first. Greedy just means trying to make as much gold as possible, trying to hold on to your gold, make as much interest as possible, because you want to have the resources to take that spot and convert it into a win. You want to be able to push levels, get into capped out synergies, cap out your board with as many upgraded units as possible, and then actually get your first. You can also play aggressive, because this can punish the lobby, right? If you're very strong and you can actually end the game very fast, it helps to basically make your board as strong as possible to chunk out as much HP from the lobby as possible if that's something that you need to do. But if you're not playing for first, which is most of the time, right? 87% of your games, like if you're just going on averages, right? Like, you know, 87% of the games you're going to do less than first, right? You gotta be prepared to play for a different placement other than first. Things often go bad when you decide to play for placements, and you have to decide on rolling versus greeting a lot of times to salvage your LP as much as possible. Typical idea is that if you have less HP, you have less ability to greed out for winouts, and it does not matter. This is something that's really important. It doesn't matter if you're the second strongest person with 0 HP, you are still 8th. When your HP ticks to 0, it does not matter how strong your board is. If there is one person that is stronger than you in the lobby and you have 1 HP, you fight that person with matchmaking RNG one time, you are bot 4. It does not matter how strong your board is. It doesn't matter if you're, if someone in the lobby has 10 Enforcer, it doesn't matter that you have 10 Rebel. If you're 10 Rebel with 1 HP, you're still going to lose to the 10 Enforcer guy, right? Like, there's certain comps that are going to be stronger than others. There's units that are going to be stronger than others, but there's also boards that people are going to hit that are going to be stronger than yours. And you'll always have to be able to identify if there is that situation occurring in the game. So, let's go through an example. So here, I just have a basic like Rebel board. This is an idea of like rolling versus greeting. Let's say this is your board. So here, I'm trying to use this this tactics.tool website the best that I can. But basically, there's like a little squiggly line that you can see. Those are your units on your bench. And then the units that are not on your bench, or sorry, the other units are the ones that are on your actual board. So if I'm playing here, right, you can see here we're playing a Rebel board. The Rebel board usually consists of 7 Rebel plus some extra units. So here, as you can see, I have the Rebel board. I have a Zoe, I have an Alawi, I have a couple upgrades to all these low-cost units, but I don't have any upgrades to the major units on my board. A lot of times with Rebel, depending on what your items are and what you hit, we're not going to talk too much about items here, but you can often greed, because the idea that you want with Rebel a lot of times is if you're really far ahead, you want to eventually replace one of these units with a Jinx. The main win condition for Rebels, excuse me, I'm going to try and move this a little bit out of the way. The main win condition for Rebels is to hit Jinx, right? This Jinx is how you get a first. I'll put little shiny, like little things on it, right? The idea is that if you're trying to play for a first, a lot of times you're trying to give yourself the best opportunity to find this Jinx. The best opportunity to find this Jinx is on level 9 typically. You're not often going to find her on level 8, and you're sure as hell not going to upgrade to a Jinx 2 on level 8. If you find a Jinx on level 8, it's a lot of times high roll. If you find a Jinx 2 on level 8, it's extremely high roll. It's just very unlikely for that to happen. So if you're playing this comp and you're saying, I want to go first, you're trying to find a point where your units are as stable as possible, such that you can make it to level 9 to increase your odds of spiking around this Jinx. Now, of course, you could high roll and find a Jinx earlier, and that greatly could affect your decision, but let's just assume that you don't have a Jinx in this particular example. You have to look at your board, and you also have to look at your bench, and you have to identify, what can I do? Like, is there a reason that I should roll, or is there a reason that I should try and level up? Because the more that you roll, the more you delay leveling up, which hurts your max cap. The sooner you can level up, the better you can play for a first. The better you can like hit the high cost units that actually make this board a significant threat. But with this board, are you actually going to make it to that level up? That's the real question. So a lot of it depends on how strong the rest of your lobby is. If the rest of your lobby has a similar board where they don't have upgraded tank and they don't have upgraded backline, a lot of times you are okay. And then you can maybe greed. That's depending on if the lobby is relatively weak. That would make you relatively strong in the lobby. Now typically this is a board that is not very strong because you don't have any upgrades. So then you should often decide to roll. Rolling is really effective, especially if you have unit pairs. As you can see here, there is a in this particular example, there is a Zoe, an Elise, and an Ezreal all on my bench. A lot of times Ezreal helps to stabilize your damage with 7 Rebel, and a lot of times Zoe is like your main carry, especially as you make it to level 9. I am paired on 1, 2, 3 units. The more units that you are paired with, what I mean by that is like, as you can see, I'm one off of upgrading them. Hitting any of these units when you roll will upgrade this board. And upgrading this board helps it to stabilize in order to make sure that you're not losing that much HP. The fact that you're going to be a lot more stable during your mid game, and that you won't queue into a lobby, just get 10-0'd and just lose all your HP and just go instant bot 4. In order to increase your average placement, a lot of times the more consistent thing to do is to roll, because having these upgrades will greatly affect your board in general. If you look here as well, let's say I do have a lot of upgrades, right? Let's say I have this upgrade, I have this upgrade, I have this upgrade. I'm still Alawi 1, which is my main tank, but I don't really have anything on my bench. Like, I'm not Alawi paired. A lot of times here, depending on your lobby, once again, you can roll if you're in dire straits, like you're playing for placements, right? You don't think you're going to make it to level 9. There's too many people in the lobby that are stronger than you. Then you want to roll to upgrade this Alawi anyways, because you're just trying to get, a 5th or a 6th. Basically, anything that increases your average placement is good enough for you to be incentivized to roll. But typically, if you are stable, right, if you are not losing that many rounds, if you have a lot of HP to work with, typically here, you don't want to roll. I almost spelled roll wrong. You don't want to roll here because you're not paired on any units. This is a concept that I talk about in a couple other guides that I made out, so I'm not going to go too much into detail with this, but a lot of times you're rolling when you have extra units to upgrade, or you're rolling when you're in dire straits that you want to upgrade your board in order to stabilize. You cannot just look at the game in a vacuum and say, well, this comp Rebel isn't good unless you have Jinx, therefore I'm not going to play Rebel because I need to find a Jinx, so if I don't find a Jinx, I'm not going to play Rebel. And there's lots of boards that are like this, right? There's even like Enforcers, for example. Remember, I made the joke that seems to be catching on. It's either Caitlyn or Aethelyn. A lot of times with Enforcers, it's the same idea. You need a Caitlyn in order to cap out this board very high and win out. However, if you're not stable, often it's better to just roll to upgrade the board. And that's like the main idea that we're trying to talk about here with playing for placements. But now we're going to go back and we're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth. Right, so let's look at it, understanding your spot in terms of HP, right? Depending on your HP, as well as your comp choice. It also depends a lot on the comp choice, which I can't get into all in this video, but I'll try and make little allusions and examples for set 13 comps. But I explain it a lot when I do like my how to play X comp guide. I explain it a lot more of what the comp wants in order to win or lose. But the idea is that, depending on your HP, as well as what the comp is, you need to figure out what to do next a lot of the times in the lobby. So here, what we're going to be looking at, my little avatar is always the one that looks like Pochita from Chainsaw Man, the little knife pup. So you can see it's a little bit highlighted. It's 12 HP. It's right like next to my ear in the little dog avatar that I have going on here. Let's consider basically 4 different scenarios, right? If we are low HP, like we are in this lobby, right? We're 12 HP, as you can see, and everybody else is like, you know, everybody here is above 20, and then these people are like all pretty low, including myself, if we're thinking about the board in general. Let's say I'm the weakest board. What I want to do is I want to roll aggressively, grief the players that are around me if possible, and try and get a 5th, right? I'm 12 HP, so the chances are I am close to 1 life or I am 1 life, which means the next combat that I have, if I lose very badly, I might instantly be like this guy, grayed out and dead. So the idea is that I want to make sure that I give this guy the hardest time and this guy the hardest time because I'm trying to squeak by and maybe get a 5th. It's going to be a tall ask for me to do better than this set of the board because they have so much more HP than me, right? 25 HP, this guy is definitely going to be alive for more than 1 round. Even if he loses really, really badly, unless there's some guy here that has like the Exodia board that just completely eliminates him, the chances are this guy's going to be alive for a while. This guy could die, I could die, and this guy can die, and that's what's going to greatly affect my placements. So if possible, if I'm the weakest in the lobby, like I am in dire straits, I need to get this LP, I'm going to lose the game, I can look around and I can say, okay, I want to make this guy's life really hard, I want to make this guy's life very hard, and I also want to try and upgrade as many things as possible, stabilize my board as much as possible, roll for as many things that I can. Rolling as well, there's a chance I hit a 6 cost, maybe I get bailed out by a Warwick, who knows? Who knows? I don't. That's why you want to roll. You want to try and just get your placement and get out. There's no way for me to miraculously be a top 4 if I'm the weakest in the lobby. However, sometimes you're the weakest and you have a win condition. Then you can try to play for it. So for example, like let's say my win condition is, oh, if I get in this 1 synergy, I win. Like let's say I'm 12 HP, but I'm 9 Rebel. And if I make it to 10 Rebel, I win the game. Right? Like, you know, one of the prismatic traits that's like an instant win, maybe. Then, you know, I might look at that and I might say, okay, I'll play towards that win con. I won't roll here because I'll try and get to 10 Rebel. Like, obviously, there's certain situations. TFT always has, like, a nuanced search situation where the strategy is to do something differently. But you have to look at it. Unless you have a clear win condition that is realizable that you can actually hit, you have to roll when you're the weakest. You got to try and stabilize your board to make sure you don't just die instantly, especially if you're low HP. Now, let's say you're weak, but you can still spike. Then you want to roll aggressively to find the necessary upgrades. The idea is that here, you want to use your gold as aggressively as possible to make sure that you spike your board to maybe become a little bit stronger than this guy, maybe a little bit stronger than this guy. Because if you can leapfrog your way up a little bit and these guys aren't rolling their gold and they're maybe greeding a little bit, you can maybe squeak by and get a 4th. You can increase your placement by quite a bit. If you're strong and you can still spike, then you have a little bit more options because, you know, if you're really strong, maybe you don't necessarily need to roll really aggressively because you are already stronger than this guy and this guy. Depending on your HP, you have to gauge with the rest of the lobby how strong you are. Which of these people are you stronger than? which of these people are you weaker than? If you're weaker than some of them or you're stronger than some of them, see which ones you're going to fight next. See which ones, there's a little like white little cross mark that appears if you don't know it, of who the next people that you are going to fight is. Look at who you have to fight coming up. Are any of them stronger than you? These are questions you have to ask yourself, because you have to decide, am I going to roll aggressively to find my upgrades? Or am I just going to try and, you know, make it to my high level without having to roll for upgrades? But a lot of times, if you are low HP, it makes sense to still roll, because you just don't have much to do. If there is even one person that is stronger than you, if you have very low HP, this person fights you, I go 7th. It does not matter if I'm stronger than this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. If I'm weaker than this guy, and he fights me for 1 round, I am 7th in this lobby. That is just how it works, because I do not have the HP to make it up the ladder in order to get my average placements. So that's why a lot of times when you're low HP, you still want to roll as aggressively as possible. If you are the strongest, however, let's say I'm the strongest in the game. Let's say I have 10 Rebel. Like, I'm just instant win without a reasonable doubt. It's fine. I'm going to be the strongest. Then you can greed to play for first, right? Even if you are low HP, if you know for a fact that you are stronger than everybody in the lobby, then what you want to do is you want to take your gold and you want to try and use it to push levels and to buy like 5 costs and 6 costs that can stabilize your board once you get to those higher levels that you can upgrade those units. Now, do not be cringe. I did talk about griefing, right? When you're griefing, it's a part of the game, but a lot of people ruin it. You do not play Kingmaker when you're griefing, right? You're not just griefing for the sake of griefing. Like, I'm going out and I'm going to go out swinging, and you do the hurricane spin trying to, like, you know, hit everybody within a 1 meter radius of your arms. It's like, no. It's like, if you're getting griefed, yes, it sucks, but that's part of the game. You always grief the people that are around you to try and increase your average placement. If you are going 5th and there is somebody else that looks like they're going 5th, you make sure to grief that person to guarantee you the 5th and guarantee that person doesn't get that placement. You want to make sure that you're stronger than the peers around you to increase your placement. You don't want to just like mindlessly throw a stone at somebody who's already winning the game. It's like, if they're not close in HP to you, or if they're not close in board strength to you, it's like they're going to outplace you anyways. All you're doing is playing Kingmaker. You're just making somebody else's life harder for no reason. Only grief if it tactically improves your position. And that's something I have a griefing guide as well. Check out the griefing guide. I'll maybe link it in the video. Who knows? But that's another thing for another day. Another topic for another day. Now, let's say you're high HP, right? Let's pretend I'm the guy at the top of this board that has 60 HP. If you're weak and you can still spike, then you have to decide how many people are stronger than you. And you have to decide if you greed and bleed out HP, or if you roll to secure placements. That's like the main decision always. These are 2 questions you always ask yourself, is how many people are stronger than me, as well as how many people have the potential to be stronger than me. Let's say I'm this guy right here, even though I have the most HP. Let's say this guy's stronger, this guy's stronger, this guy's stronger, and this guy's stronger. Let's say all 4 of these people have Exodia. They are all stronger than me. Then it makes sense for me to roll instead of greeding. I want to roll because if everybody is stronger than me, I'm going to end up 5th here if I just like hold on to my gold forever. It makes sense for me to roll to make sure that I'm as strong as possible, to try and make this HP last as long as possible, because eventually with matchmaking, these guys are going to kill each other off, and then I can increase my average placement. However, if I am like, you know, able to spike, it makes more sense to do that. However, if I have like prospects for the future, right, I'm weak, but I can spike a lot later, right? Like maybe I spike if I make it to level 9, maybe I spike if I make it to level 10, then you can decide to greed because you have the HP to work with. So being weak, you have one of the resources, which is HP, that you can use in order to capitalize on your board. However, a big part of it is how many people are stronger than you. You have to look at that and you have to decide, because that will affect how much you roll and when you roll. If everybody's stronger than you, you want to roll earlier. If some people are stronger than you, then you can decide, will this actually make me go 2nd? Will this actually make me go 3rd? How much stronger do I get if I greed? Am I greeding just for the sake of greeding? What are my bailouts? What am I looking for? And it's very comp dependent. Meanwhile, if you're high HP and you are the strongest, once again, depending on if you're strong or the strongest, how many people are stronger than you? And you have to decide if you can greed or bleed HP and roll. It's the same questions always, right? And it's you have a lot more options when you are high HP, because you can use that HP as a resource in order to convert your board into a stronger board. If you're strong, let's say you're stronger than this guy, but you're not stronger than this guy, or this guy. Maybe if you greed and you get another plate, you get another unit that gives you a better synergy, maybe you will become stronger than these people. So then you can become the strongest. You have to gauge whether that's the case. If there's other people that are stronger than you and you're relatively strong, how many people are stronger than you? What's the placements that they get, right? If this guy's stronger than you and this guy's stronger than you, you can probably greed a little bit because the chances are they're going to kill off each other, right? They both have much lower HP than you. Eventually, they will have to fight each other. The more HP you have, the more likely it is that eventually the matchmaker will work out such that these stronger people with lower HP will kill each other off. So it makes sense for you to greed to make sure that you're stronger than everybody else in the lobby, and then you just lose to whoever survives the battle between these two giga high rollers. That's like the idea a lot of times. Now, if you are the strongest, you just want to make sure you convert that position as well as possible. You want to have as much gold as you can, react to your opponents, make sure they don't like do some cheesy shit like get like upgraded 3-star 4 cost or something like that. But that's a lot more in towards like optimization, which will be a content for another video later in the week. The main idea in TFT as well is that you always want to be around 2 lives, right? Try and keep around 20 HP. The reason 20 HP is like a good number is that, like, you know, based on the amount of damage you take per round, which will be on the next slide, typically you can survive taking a very bad loss against somebody and still have HP to work with. So you often want to have HP to adjust your strategy, because TFT is the hardest when you're 1 life, right? If you have 1 HP, if you fight one person that's stronger than you, that's your placement. It does not matter how strong your board is. Like, you know, in a perfect world in TFT, you know, the strongest board goes first, the second strongest board goes second, the third strongest board goes third, etc. But that's not always the case. You can have the strongest board in the lobby, or sorry, the second strongest board in the lobby, and you can go 8th. Because if there's one person that's stronger than you, and you don't have the HP to work with it, you're 8th. That's just how that works. It just matters about matchmaking. So a lot of times, like, being 2 lives depends on the damage per stage. So this may be a little bit confusing if you've never seen it before. But basically, the damage per stage is 1 damage per unit, which is this. And then it's then you add the base. So it's base damage plus 1, right? So let's say like there's X units, right? It's base plus X equals damage. So what do I mean by that? So based on the stage, right? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, that's a little number that you see at the top of the screen when you're playing TFT. Based on the stage, there is a base amount of damage that you take for losing the round, and then you take an additional 1 point of damage for each surviving unit that your opponent has. So let's say your opponent kills you and they have 3 remaining units and it is stage 4, then you will take 8 plus 3, you will take 11 damage, right? So that's why 20 is around like okay, because typically you're not going to lose by more than like 5 or 6. Like, even if you take a really bad loss, you're not going to lose by much more than, like, you know, as many units as they have on their board, but typically you're killing something. So like, you know, on stage 5 you could take 10 damage, and then, you know, some other amount of units will exist. Like, let's say you fight a really strong board and then you take like 4 units are surviving, you'll take 14 damage, right? It's very hard to like surpass 20, especially like before stage 6, right? Stage 6, maybe like 12 with like an 8 unit loss, you hit 20, but that's why like around 20 is usually like considered to be 2 lives. So the main thing that you always want to consider is, based on the stage, especially if it's like later in the game, you don't want to you always want to be above 2 lives, just like roughly like 20 HP, because you want to be able to react to other people's boards. You might think you're stronger than somebody, there might be matchmaking RNG, they might hit something last minute right before queuing up to fight you, right? You might look at their board, you'd be like, oh, I'm weaker than them, or oh, I'm stronger than them, and then they just hit a 6 cost, put it on their board, you queue into the battle, the time ticks down, and all of a sudden you're just getting railed by Warwick. You always want to have like a wiggle room in order to like make sure that you're fine, and especially if there is like a group of high rollers. Another way you can look at it is you want to have a life for every high roller in the lobby, right? If there's 4 people that are stronger than you, you want to be 4 lives, because then if you fight them all back to back to back to back, you don't go bot 4, right? If there's 1 high roller in the lobby, you want to make sure you're 2 lives, because you want to make sure that if you can beat everybody else fair and square, but then if you fight the 1 high roller, you have the wiggle room to fight him and then survive so that you can still get your placements. So that's like the idea. And that's why I usually just say 20, but you can actually math it out, right? Like, technically 12 HP could be 2 lives on stage 5, right? This happens a lot, right? Because on stage 5, you take a 1 unit loss, you only take 11 damage. But, that's like, that's like streamer talk. Like, that's when, like, you watch a streamer, they're like, oh, yeah, like, like 29 HP, that's 3 lives for sure. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not real. It's like kind of 3 lives. You know what I mean? Or it's kind of 2 lives. But anyways, let's talk about some other examples. So this is going to be like an RNG encounters, like Jace. Playing for placements really matters because a lot of times when you have people that are committing very early to comps, you can often decide or kind of figure out roughly what their placement's going to be or what's going to happen, right? Like I said, like a lot of times I'm talking about like final boards in this video or like stage 4 because that's like where, the big meatball of TFT is. But you should be looking and considering these things throughout every stage of the game, from stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4 to stage 5. You have to constantly be evaluating boards. Jace is something that happens very early in the game, so a lot of people are committing around an Ornn artifact. So if you think about Jace encounter, let's go here. Let's say you're in Jace encounter, right? And these are your opponent's boards on this side of the squiggly line. So there's one person who's playing like Renata and Rel, and they have a very clear Light Shield crest. This is a very strong comp. There's somebody that hit Exodia. They hit a range Nocturne. This is still something that's really broken despite nerfs. It's something that easily can go first in a lobby. And then somebody else has something like Unleash the Beast Urgot with an intervening locket. That's another insanely broken Ornn artifact combination. If you queue into a lobby and you see this crap, and it's like this guy, this guy, this guy, let's just assume, right? This guy's first, this guy's second, this guy's third, right? You shouldn't really look at people's boards and be like, oh, I hope they don't hit. If they don't hit, I have a chance. You should always be anticipating the fact that they might actually hit their final units. If you see 3 people angling towards a very high roll spot, already in this game, your strategy should be playing for like somewhere between 4th and 5th. Maybe like 3rd, maybe that's a little bit too aggressive, right? Something like 3rd to 5th. This should be your target range. You don't want to play anything super greedy that you're playing for first because there's so many people that have opportunities already to play for first. You can't just like miraculously out of your butt cheeks pull out a first when there's so many things that have potential for first. That's what happens a lot with Jace's artifacts, right? Now, for example, like if you're playing Jace's, don't play something like Conqueror, right? Conqueror requires you to get lots of stacks. You hit like 6 Conqueror, you win for free. Of course, if you have a good Conqueror spot, by all means play Conqueror. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you shouldn't angle yourself towards something that is not very consistent. You want to angle yourself towards something more consistent because you're aiming more for like that little range of like, a 3 to a 5, right? You're not trying to go first because a lot of times you'll just end up going 8th and then you'll lose all your LP. So you want to try and structure your game plan around playing something that complements these boards potentially, or it puts you in a spot where you're not like absolutely just getting like deleted in your mid game, right? You want to play something that you convert your gold a little bit earlier, keep up with lobby tempo, and not necessarily play something that's very swingy because the chances of you winning is going to be very low compared to some of these ones, especially if like let's say this guy's a Nocturne 3, right? You're gonna need like you might not even you'll probably be dead before you even cash out enough Conqueror stacks to even compete with a board like this. So you have to adjust your strategy a lot of the time. So for example, if you see a lot of people re-rolling and a lot of people have like win cons, this is something that I do a lot in Jace's, right? You can decide to play for like the 1st/8th, right? Which is just like, if I hit, I win. If I lose, I don't. And just try and like, outcap some boards that look like they're already going to be insanely strong. Or you can look at it and say, okay, well, reroll, reroll, reroll. What's really consistent at getting placements? Rerolls a lot of the times. Maybe I'll just try and find myself in a spot where I can play something like a Speech. Maybe I'll take an Ornn artifact. Maybe it's not the best Ornn artifact in the game, but I'll take something that maybe complements this, and I'll play some sort of reroll line, right? A lot of times in these type of boards, you play something like Zeri, not because Zeri is strong, just because with Zeri, a lot of the times, if you have something that's serviceable, some generic frontline Ornn artifact, and you have good items for it, you're going to hit this unit for free, and you're not saying I'm going to go first with Zeri. Zeri isn't a comp where you easily get first, but what you're saying is, I'm going to mitigate my losses, right? I'm making sure that I don't go 8th, because these guys are going to rail all the other people that are trying to use their gold to try and outcap them. I'm going to try and play something where I blow all of my gold early, make sure that I aim for like that 3rd to 5th, and then hope that they kill each other right? Nocturne player, congrats, you go first. You high rolled, that's fine. I'll try and like squeak by and get somewhere in this range. And that's something that happens a lot with Jace's encounter. But it can happen anywhere, right? Like even if this isn't necessarily a Jace encounter game, you have to think about this and look at this, right? And say to yourself, will I outcap any of these boards, right? If they have very broken combinations. Meanwhile, let's say there's another person on your board. Let's say, you know, it's not Jace encounter. Let's say you're playing somebody and they have like a Caitlyn 2 and they're playing 8 Enforcer, right? You know that you're not going to beat the Enforcer player. So you got to adjust your strategy and play around something else. That can happen late game and decide, okay, do I roll based on that or do I not roll based on that? Another example is a Chem Baron, right? A lot of times this is something you can see very early, and a lot of people don't really take it into account. Let's say you see a Chem Baron player, right? Now, obviously Chem Baron is a little bit weaker, but Chem Baron can still win lobbies. I've seen it win lobbies in my lobbies, so I'm sure it wins lobbies in your lobbies. It can't just be me that's losing to Chem Baron sometimes. I refuse to admit it. So, let's say somebody's playing around Chem Baron, right? And let's say you can see from the early part of the game, this was something that existed a little bit more before, but assume that they're going to get their cash out, right? Assume they're going to get some sort of cash out. You can always check periodically to make sure, but your strategy should be around the idea that the Chem Baron player might just miraculously win, right? You can have like, you know, 10 HP and you think that you're okay. If the Chem Baron player cashes out like their 500 plus cash out, you're basically on a timer on when this person's going to beat your ass, right? That's basically it. You're basically sitting there and you're in a waiting room of, when does Chem Baron player come beat me up? That's basically it. So it happens with a lot of boards, right? Imagine somebody hits something like 10 Rebel, right? Let's do Rebel, for example, just to make it maybe a little bit more applicable for something like this. Let's say you're playing like an Mbessa encounter, and somebody has 10 Rebel. And need one more unit. Let's just put this guy. Right? Look, it's all shiny. It's prismatic. 10 Rebel. Everything's broken. They are so strong. Right? Of course. Right? Of course they're strong. But like, you see something like this, you can't think to yourself, oh, I'll just continue greeting my gold and playing for first. You're in a waiting room. It doesn't matter how strong your board is. You're in a waiting room for this guy to come by like Grim Reaper and take you out. So you don't want to needlessly throw away HP against other boards that are weaker. You want to try and preserve as much HP as possible. You want to make sure that you, like, you know, for example, if you're thinking about your damage per round, you want to make sure that you're killing units, right? Losing by 4 units versus losing by 1 unit is substantial. Even if your board isn't going to be stronger than somebody else, killing units adds up. If you kill 1 extra unit every fight in a stage, that can add up to an extra life. If you kill 2 units every single fight in a stage, it definitely adds up to an extra life. It's very important to strengthen your board when you see things that are messed up in a lobby. So, based on strategies, you can kind of like tie in. I remember I did a strategy guide in general about understanding lobby tempo. You can check that out on my channel as well if you want more details on this. But tying into that video, reroll. A lot of times with reroll, it's consistent. It's very hard to go first or 8th unless you really high roll. If you think about a reroll in a vacuum, a lot of times people play rerolls from good spots and that's why they're able to get up first. But unless you have something like, you know, Unleash the Beast for Urgot or Starry Night for like different reroll comms, or like some sort of prismatic ticket, like unless you have something that like really helps you to cap out your board high, or like some Giga Combat, maybe not prismatic ticket, but you know what I mean, right? Like if somebody's just trying to raw play a reroll comp, a lot of times it's hard for them to go first. They're spending so much gold on the reroll that a lot of times there's some high roller that makes it to level 9, has some upgraded Jace 2, LeBlanc 2, Elise like 3, like whatever the fuck, right? They have some massive insane board. And it's very hard for you as the reroller that spent a lot of your gold early on, especially if you low roll while rerolling, to go first. But it's also hard for you to go 8th, because a lot of times you're preserving your HP in your mid game. Your board is relatively strong. You have a lot of consistency and stability around the 3-star front line, 3-star back line, that a lot of times you're basically unable to go 8th. Unless things go really wrong, so really messed up lobby, like what I had today. But playing for, a lot of times you're playing for like a 2nd to 6th, right? So you're playing for like a consistent middle of the pack placement. So if you start the game off and you say to yourself, okay, what should I angle here? Let's say I have items. I can either play Sorks, or I can play Renata, or I can play something else. Like, you can try and angle yourself, your augment choices, and your decisions at every stage around what other people are playing. If there's already somebody that looks like they're going first, maybe aim for the 2 to 6. If there's somebody that looks like they're going like, second, third, fourth, you might want the more consistent option. However, if it looks like everybody is playing for a consistent 2 to 6 placement, then it's very difficult for you to like break yourself from the pack. Maybe you go for the more first or eighth to try and like surmount them. And that kind of brings into the idea of like defaulting around level 8 or 4 cost. A lot of times, depending on what comp you're playing, there's a very large mixture of placements. Yesterday, we actually talked a lot about Silco. Silco is a comp where it's very first or eighth. It's not something that you play for mostly consistency. It's an idea that you play an uncontested unit to stabilize on stage 4 to make it easier for you to cap out around legendary units. That's a comp that, I wouldn't play Silco unless you have a very good spot for it, because it's very narrow in one sense, but also it's very easy to first or eighth. There's also other narrow comps that you can easily go eighth with despite them being very strong. That's something like Enforcers a lot of the times. When you're playing Enforcers, you're basically you need a Violet, right? You need a Vi upgrade, right? If you don't have a Vi 2 in your mid game, a lot of times the Enforcer is going to be really bad. It's going to be very hard to stabilize. There's other comps that are like this that are very dependent on one particular unit. Obviously, if you're playing towards that one particular trait, that's something that happens, right? When you're playing those, sometimes it's very easy for you. Like, you go on your roll down, you don't see any Vi's, right? You have Enforcer Emblem, but you have 0 Vi's, 0 Caitlyn's. It's very easy to go 8th because you can miss very hard because depending on your gold and your placement, that's something that happens. So a lot of times 4 cost, depending on the type of comp that it is and depending on what units they're playing, sometimes you can easily sway yourself to an 8th, but because you're playing around higher cost units, a lot of times it makes it easier for you to get to like these level 9 high cap boards where you can very easily go first as well. That's why it's like more first or eighth. But typically it's a mixture of placements. There's many consistent 4 cost comps. I think Rebels is kind of consistent in a way, but maybe that's just me. There's other things like Scrap, which I think is still kind of consistent, but of course it requires a good spot. Heimer Sentinels is pretty consistent because there's lots of points of stabilization around Ezreal and Corki, and you have multiple different carries of different costs. But a lot of times, that's 4 costs kind of play themselves into that type of spot of being like the ability to like, option select or play around different units. Even Sorks a lot of times, it's not like, it is somewhat first or eighth. Like there is a bit of narrowness in finding Elise, but a lot of times you can stabilize relatively easily. Like, there's Swain 2 backline that can stabilize you, Swain 2 front line that can stabilize you, right? There's some consistency. There's a mixture is what I would like to say, right? Depending on your spot and the lobby, there's a mixture of placements you can get. Meanwhile, there's stuff like Fast 9. I'm just trying to go on the opposite spectrums, right? A lot of times you're either rerolling low cost, playing around your mid 4 cost units, or you're going Fast 9. When you Fast 9, a lot of times you're on thinner margins, right? In order to Fast 9, you have to greed or be really ahead. But a lot of times, by you greeding in order to make it to level 9 and have enough gold to roll on level 9, you're often playing with thinner margin. That's what we've been talking a lot about in this video. And that makes it very first or eighth. Now, maybe you don't go exactly eighth, but it's very like, you either go first or you easily bot 4 is maybe a better explanation of some of these comps. But the idea is that if you're spending a bunch of your gold, if you're not spending a bunch of your gold and you're using it to make as much interest as possible, save up, level up, use it to level, and then still have enough gold to roll, and then try and upgrade your units. If you miss on the units, you don't have your upgrades, you don't ever stabilize, it's very easy for you to just go like whoop and just lose out on all of your LP. Remember, this is the main takeaway I want from this video. I want everybody to walk away from this video, and I want you guys to remember this one thing. The only thing that matters if there's a fucked up lobby is your HP. That is the truth. Fenrir, quote me on it, right? That's the only thing that matters. If there is somebody that has 10 Rebel, if there's somebody that has 10 Enforcer, if there's somebody that has, I don't know, pick a Prismatic Trait, 9 Scrap, if there's somebody that's 7 Black Rose, if there's like a guy that has like 3-star Warwick, if there's somebody that has like 3-star, like, I don't know, pick a 3-star that's really broken, 3-star Echo, right? It doesn't matter if you are the second strongest in the lobby, because you fight that person, you are dead. All that matters is HP. The way that the lobby is going to shape out is who fights the strong fucked up board. However many times you fight it, that's your placement. So you always have to be aware of that. And that it doesn't only apply in fucked up lobbies. It applies in most lobbies. If you just look at what other people are doing, look at their boards, and you estimate where are they going to fall in this placement ladder, use that to your advantage to decide, okay, what can I do to better my placement here? And that's the conclusion of this video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. and hopefully that was somewhat informative. Yeah, have fun, enjoy playing. Like I said, there's gonna be some other guides that are similar topics in the week as much as I have time. Also, I'm gonna do another members only video soon. I have to review 1 or 2 videos. So those are gonna be fun if you're a member. Also, member tier 2s, by the way, nobody's taking me up on the offer, and I don't know why, but I think that's fine. But if you like member tier 2, I do a VOD review of your videos. So like I have a couple member tier 2s, like 2 or 3, I think. Just reach me out in the Discord, and I'll give you the session, because I'm supposed to do that, and I feel like maybe I didn't make it clear enough, but that's included. But thank you. Bye bye.